Welcome to our podcast. My name is Trelawney. I've been writing about relationships in the national press and magazines for 15 years, and I've been working at the high end of personal matchmaking for 10. I'm also a qualified life coach and relationship counsellor. I am also addicted to reality TV. So our podcast is a mix of relationships and reality. Can I introduce you to Andrew, please?
Hi everybody, my name is Andrew Parker-Dennis. I'm the MD of Data and Options, the biggest matchmaking group in the UK. I've done various radio shows in and around relationships and the best way to work through them. And yeah, like Trelawney, I too am quite addicted to reality dating shows. I think they give a lot of insight. And yeah, we're here today to talk about them.
Thank you. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a couple of our favourite shows, throwing in some wisdom, discussion and advice as we go. So Married at First Sight is one of the big shows at the moment. Are you watching regularly, Andrew? Do you binge and watch them all together, or do you wait for a new episode?
You know what? I tend to wait for a new episode, work through them. Sometimes I have a few to catch up at the weekend, which is always quite nice to settle in at the weekend and kind of binge through a few. But yeah, watching all of them really, and Married at First Sight is one of my favourite, and also the My Mum, Your Dad as well, which has been quite big on TV at the minute. So yeah, love them all.
Okay, so we're going to talk about both today. Married at First Sight, so that takes the concept of personal matchmaking to an extreme level. So when people usually join a matchmaking agency, they're saying, I want you to do the search for me. However, I do still want to have a little bit of say in who I choose to go out with. Married at First Sight is really kind of saying, I've given up searching myself. Maybe I don't totally trust the decisions I've made. So I'm going to put the decision completely into someone else's hands. So it's kind of an extreme version of what we do. We're going to have a little think about the honeymoon episode. So looking at how the couples, the first four couples are surviving once they're actually in a situation together, and there's not the excitement of family and friends around. So we're going to take a little look at each relationship one by one and see how we think things are panning out. We're going to start with Jay and Luke. Now, Jay and Luke are really lucky because they've got that very special thing that we're trying to find for every single member of our personal matchmaking agency, which is chemistry. So do you feel that, Andrew, that there's a real physical and emotional connection between these two?
I think there is. I mean, we see it on TV. I mean, they've settled into each other's company very quickly. And I think one of the key factors to that is the fact that they are both open. They've not come in with too many lists of the people they want. They're looking beneath the surface, and they're finding that quite quickly with that openness to actually wanting to meet somebody and putting the trust in the process, which is important, and putting the trust in their instinct. And yeah, those two for me are very much connected. And you know, as we've seen through the honeymoon, that's got deeper and deeper. It's not gone the other way. And I think sometimes the excitement of the wedding, yes, that's a joyful moment. But beyond that, that's when they're digging into each other. And the fact that they've hit on so many serious conversations, exposing the vulnerability, is what's leading them through to get to the deeper sections of a relationship. Because as we know, initial attraction is important, but a relationship is built on the foundations of trust, understanding, and being able to express yourself and show yourself as the person you are. So yeah, for me, at the minute, they're the full package.
Yeah, they are really showing an openness and a trust. And in the different kind of stories that they're revealing to each other, both listen, both kind of offer a real support there. I think the really important thing with these two is they're on the same page. And we see when we look at the other relationships, it's so difficult when needs and wants aren't balanced and expectations are very different. But these two, at the moment, just such a perfect match, such great people. Now, it might not have worked out, you know, they're just very, very lucky because both of those people in a different match would have been perhaps completely different. They may not have been able to be honest and relaxed, and they're so sweet and funny together. So that was perfect matchmaking so far. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that balance, isn't it, of being able to be funny, being able to be deep, being able to be attracted to somebody and know that you're going to get it back. So that's why I think they've got so many different elements that are in the right place and aligning at the same time. And I guess that's where the magic happens in any relationship.
That is where the magic happens. So let's think about Roz and Thomas, because we're jumping to an example where expectations, needs and wants are completely out of sync. So Roz, they've arrived at their Alpine Lodge, and Roz is becoming absolutely obsessed with hugs, cuddles, and any kind of physical touch. Now, this is making Thomas kind of slightly recoil, because he is very much wanting to see if this is genuine. And to be honest, he is very grounded in reality. You know, they've only just met. And he says, you know, we are kind of strangers, which she is really upset by, but it is true. So one of them is kind of has totally bought into the fairy tale that they're a married couple. Even though she doesn't want to go too far, she feels like he should be treating her like a wife, very affectionate. He's been hurt before. He's not quite sure if he believes that she likes him. So what's your take on this one, Andrew?
I think between the two, as you say, at the minute they're not aligning. Although later on, I think as the honeymoon progresses, that openness does come through. I think from Thomas's point of view, I think the damage from previous relationships, specifically his last one where he was criticised instantly, is something that is playing its part in his mind, and to a degree is overthinking a basic need, which is, you know, even with your friends, you'll give them a hug if you feel they need it, but he's putting too much pressure on that and thinking it's far more. And he doesn't want to lead Roz on, but at the minute, I guess that approach is pushing her further away, because her basic need is affection. And like most people, when you enter a relationship, that initial reassurance that somebody does like you and that physical connection goes hand in hand. And the conversations have been quite stunted and awkward on the back of that. And they are two people. And I do think as they progress, I think they'll grow closer. But at first, he's very standoffish. He's protecting himself. And there's a huge fear of rejection, which is holding him back from showing himself.
Yeah. I wanted to say to him, just relax, just let yourself enjoy it. But I totally understood, because if someone was saying to me, you know, within a very short time, why aren't you hugging me? Why aren't you cuddling me? Why aren't you, you know, it does, I think, makes you take a step back if somebody's pushing. So I really wanted to say to her, you know, just relax, see if there really is a foundation there and a friendship, and then those things will come naturally. So, but as you say, by the final dinner, there did seem to be a little bit of a breakthrough, and I almost felt some real chemistry there. So, yeah, fingers crossed that is going to build.
I think it will. I honestly do. I think now they've had that conversation, and it's not a case of I need a hug, I'm not ready. It's actually the reasons behind why she needs a hug and why perhaps he hasn't, means that open and deeper conversation means that you can get past that, because relationships are all about getting through individual hurdles and finishing at the line together. So yeah, I'm hopeful for those two, to be fair.
Good. So really fiery honeymoon for Ella and Nathaniel. Now, they started off quite well, pre-honeymoon. But again, total mismatch in terms of wants, needs, and expectations. Now, Ella appeared absolutely laser focused on establishing whether Nathaniel found her attractive. And again, wanted to really feel as though she was an authentic wife and they were a married couple that had fallen in love the way most other married couples do. Whereas he was taking a very real approach. We've only just met. I'm trying to work out whether there's a pattern here. The two guys both saying, you know, is there something real here? And the two women in these cases wanting reassurance, validation. And the problem is, the more you express that want to someone, the more you make them kind of feel under pressure. What do you make of these two?
You know what? I think the reason why Ella is constantly wanting that reassurance is due to her past experiences. You know, we've heard the rejection, the turmoil and the struggle she's been through in life to become the person she is and where she is in life. And it's obviously so important to her because of the previous rejections that she needs that security of knowing the person she's with is actually interested in her. And it's almost become to the point where he will go in the opposite direction purely for the fact that she's asking for it. And there does need to be that conversation with, perhaps without the cameras, perhaps without the added pressure, where they can actually just speak from the soul about the reasons why, and they haven't got there. There's just a resistance to actually invest. And I think from Nathaniel's point of view, he does want to build a friendship. He does want to have that genuine connection before anything physical. But I just think there's probably somewhere in between, which is the right approach. And just sort of, if somebody needs that reassurance, there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying to somebody, look, I really do like you. I really find you attractive, but I don't want to invest in the physical side right now, because I'd like to get to know you first, so that that doesn't blur the lines of whether we do connect on a deeper level. But that hasn't been said. And then obviously we've seen it spiraled out of all control and insults have flown around. And sometimes what's said is difficult to then come back from, because an apology doesn't always cut it when things are said quite deep about people's personalities and whether they're there for the right reasons, whether they're just there to attract the right reasons. And I think with Ella, I do understand when she's in a public arena, because of the rejection she's faced, she will put herself out there, be big, be louder than the criticism she's perhaps received in the past. It's a front, it's a protection shield she's showing. And I think for Nathaniel, he's got to understand that and kind of connect with that feeling, and then talk through how perhaps he can do it, and let her know that actually in that environment he's got her back. And I think that will allow her to settle into certain situations.
I think the big problem for these two is obviously Ella has opened up to him off camera about her previous job. And whilst all the name calling was flying around, there was also some shaming. And that's a conversation that they had off camera. So for me, I think the trust is really damaged there. And as you say, it's so difficult to come back from these things. And this is, I hold this, very closely to my heart in my own relationships. Once you've said these things, you can say sorry afterwards, but it does continue to play in your mind. And the shaming, I think, was unforgivable. I know they're on a reality show and he's saying, well, you need to reveal your true self, but there needs to be that element of trust and privacy as well, doesn't there?
Trust and respect. I mean, the bottom line is you can have these conversations in a relationship where things can be said which are hurtful between the two of you. That's okay. You can do that because it's a secure place, and then you can move through and discuss. But that's been broadcast to the millions of people that are watching, and that is a big shame. And something that obviously she's talked about every experience and every trouble she's been through. She didn't expose that to the camera. She exposed that privately. So then for that to be voiced publicly will hurt very deeply. And that is a break of trust.
Yeah. And there was no apology. He ate dinner on his own in the room afterwards. So I'm worried about those. Yeah. I'm worried about those.
Comments by her behaviour. And that's not acceptable. No. You've got to take ownership of what you say. And if it's not right, I mean, Ella did come back to him and apologise for what she'd said to him, but he didn't want to hear it. He just wanted to voice what he felt, and that's not conducive to a positive relationship.
No, lots of hurt feelings building up there. So let's go on to Laura and Arthur. Now, Laura arrives on the honeymoon very disappointed because she's convinced that Arthur's taken his vows from the internet. Now, I have to say, when you're reading vows to somebody that you've never met before, I could see some people trying to find a little bit of help on the internet. I didn't think it was the crime of the century, but, she obviously felt that she wanted them to be very genuine and heartfelt, and I understood that too. But, with allowance for the fact that the situation is very different from a normal marriage. Arthur appeared completely out of his depth when she was grilling him about this and looked a little bit like a deer in headlights. But he found a great solution. He's great at tennis. He took her to play tennis. She saw him in his element, feeling confident, looking great. You know, she started to think, oh, he's quite hot. I find him quite attractive. Now he's being Arthur. I think it was great that rather than get defensive about the vows, he kind of decided I need to show more of my authentic self. I've done a lot of pretending in the past. I've lied in the past. It was very, very open. And by the end, when he actually presented vows he'd written himself, they were both tearing up and felt like they were building a real connection. So it was a great lesson in being your true self and taking your partner's feelings on board. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think in the first instance, I think Arthur was at his depth. If I'm honest, I think, you know, Laura came in with very high expectations, almost with a checklist of what she wanted. And as we know, that's always dangerous because
Very dangerous.
That's not where you find love. You know, if it had been, Laura would be in a relationship, settled, married, and very happy. So that's where matchmaking does take you a little bit outside of that and give you perhaps people who align with matters of the heart as opposed to just superficial things. But I agree. Once Arthur, I mean, to be fair, Arthur did make a mistake at the vow by saying that he loved her when it
That was weird.
That was just a little bit.
But he looked terrified. Even as he said it, I think he knew that this was just going horribly wrong.
He wasn't sure, and he just thought, "Oh, I'll say it anyway," and that was a mistake. But actually, to some extent, that led to them being open because she did challenge him on it, rightly so. And I do think from when they got on the honeymoon, she did let those expectations disappear a little bit, and she just wanted to know who Arthur was. Once she got that across to him, he did open up. He did become vulnerable, and he stopped trying to be the person she wanted him to be, and actually became himself. And again, whenever you're trying to adjust your own personality, your own preferences to fit in with somebody else, eventually the wheels come off. You know, authenticity is a massive thing, and vulnerability is a massive thing. And, you know, I think she was really clever because when she had that conversation, she did it in a very intimate arena where they were both in the bath.
In a petal-filled bath.
Yeah, there was no hiding.
Much more intimate.
Actually,
yeah,
it was really intimate, and it kind of allowed him to say, look, and she did say, in order for me to fall in love with you, Arthur, I need to know Arthur. And that was a massive point. And doing it in that environment, as opposed to perhaps if we go back to Ella and Nathaniel, that was when those conversations came up, it was on the back of an argument in quite a aggressive environment that they'd done it through, whereas this was very soft, light in the petals and everything else. It was a romantic setting. She was saying, look, Arthur, just be yourself.
Yeah.
And if it's something that's going to progress, it will, but it can never progress while you're trying to be whatever I want you to be. So I thought that was a real breakthrough for them. And again, you know what, when I first saw it, I thought, not a chance. But actually, now that they've had that conversation and there is that honesty, then actually, I do think they can move forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. I hope so. I mean, at the beginning, it was a little bit like head teacher and student, but I'm hoping it's evening out now. So let's move on to my mum, your dad. Now, a couple of things I'd like to say about this. First of all, I really hope if they come back with another season, the budget allows them to go somewhere more exotic. So I thought it was slightly unfair that Love Island get this amazing location and they are in a country house somewhere in the UK, but fair enough. I mean, it was nice, but I'd like to see them have something a bit more glamorous. I love the concept that these kind of almost grown kids want their parents to find happiness, which is so sweet. What I loved, though, was when there was actually a result and a couple started to kiss and the kids were screaming and hiding behind the cushions. And I thought, that is now I'm seeing my children. First of all, I'm thinking, these children are so reasonable and supportive. And they want the parents to find love. And then when I see all the screaming and the cringing, and they are normal kids who kind of want their parents to be happy, but also don't want to see it. But I love the concept, and we're going to talk a bit about the school disco. So what do you think of the concept? Are you enjoying it?
No, I love the concept. I think it's been crying out for it, if I'm honest. I mean, I've spoken about this on the radio, but I think people who are going second time round, one of the biggest things they need is the children to be on board. You know, because if the children aren't on board, at the end of the day, they're not going to progress. So having the kids in control and actually leading the process takes all that stress and anxiety of what they'll think away. So yeah, I think the concept's brilliant. I agree. I think it could be in a better location, and on the back of it, I think it could be longer, giving them time to explore it a little bit more. If I'm honest, when I suppose the thing with Love Island compared to My Mum, Your Dad is they do bring people in constantly to challenge relationships. I'm not sure that's necessary to the extent they've done in the second time round over 50s dating, because people are relatively ready to settle down. And we've seen a few of those problems with Martin H and Martin M, and you know that's had its influence and arguably damaged poor Martin H. Is it Martin H? I think.
Why do you pick so many contestants with the same names?
I know, that's just confusing, isn't it? But I do love the concept, and you know, you've seen that people do tend to know we want to find this relationship, and the games aren't there. There's no gamesmanship in the main. It is literally let me just find somebody to connect with, and you know that's been great. So yeah, I do love the concept.
Yeah, I thought that School Disco was very clever. Subconsciously, it would take you back to feeling very much as though you were back in those days where you hadn't been hurt or disappointed, and just the music playing, the whole kind of setup, I think would have made all of those individuals feel a little bit more free and a little bit more hopeful, a little bit less guarded. And we saw that. And I found that the conversations I was listening to, I'm sure they could have been having the same conversations at 20. So that was really sweet. A lot of the hurt seemed to be kind of disappearing. How did you feel?
Yeah, I agree. It was a clever concept because I think a lot of the hurt and damage that people have had is further down the line. So to take them back to that sort of 20, 22, 23, 24 sort of years was really clever. And, you know, I think what we've seen is there's no real difference. You know, emotions and vulnerability and excitement about being in a relationship is everything we're seeing in there. And that nervousness to be able to take it a little bit further and perhaps have that first kiss. And funnily enough, it's like you said with the kids, they've done this, but be careful what you wish for, because there's going to be some toe curling issues when they start seeing the parents sort of having a kiss and going down that relationship side. But yeah, I thought it was a great concept. And you've seen what we've seen is people actually really interact and become comfortable with each other. And it is certainly a fast track to what we do in matchmaking, to put them in that environment and to see how they connect. But yeah, it was great.
Yeah, and I thought Janie was so sweet when she decided she was going to put herself first and confess her feelings. And she did it in such a sweet way because she didn't want to hurt her friend. And again, they're all the things that happen when we're much younger, but maybe being handled a bit more sensitively, lots of life experience. I'm a huge fan of Tallulah, and I'm just really, really rooting for her because she's still, her daughter said how much hurt she'd been through. She still has such an innocence and a sweetness about her. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what pans out for her by the end.
Yeah, I mean, Tallulah's a fabulous person. And I think everybody in there are. I think we'll have to see what happens with the two Martins. One's very honest, one seems to be playing games. But certainly with Janie and Roger, I think what Janie did at that point is she knew Roger couldn't take that next step. He wouldn't be able to, purely for the fact that he was so scared. But actually, once she did, he became able to show his emotions and actually think, actually, this is okay. I'm allowed to do this. And that connection has just grown ever since. And yes, the respect of then having the discussion with a friend to let her know that that's where it was important. And I think it was handled really well. There was no triangle or square as people talk about. It was very much, look, this is where my head's at. And Roger, I mean, everybody loves Roger. He's a lovely, lovely man.
Yeah.
And Jane is a lovely woman. And I honestly think that they will succeed and move forward, once the program's finished, the experiment, whatever you want to call it, and they do enter the real world scenario. I think they've got a strong connection, as have a few in there, actually.
Yeah, I think it's a great show. It's perfect TV because, I definitely have a few emotional moments with every episode, whether I'm kind of tearing up because, well, mostly because it's a mix of emotions, really. I mean, at the kiss, I was tearing up, and partly because of the magic for them, and partly the reaction of the kids. You know, I could see my own family in there, and so it's a great show, I think, for all ages, and it's really reflective of a demographic, you know, that we provide personal matchmaking for, and it's great for everyone to see that you don't get to a certain point and these things aren't important anymore. But also sometimes you get to a point where you kind of think, I'm not going to try this again. I'm not going to be hurt again. I can't. No one's ever going to love me as much as my previous partner. You know, all these different things happen. But actually, a show like this shows that we're always ready to start a new chapter. It just takes the right person unlocking that, doesn't it?
It does. I think one of the key things that I think everybody in that process has realised, whether they've been successful in the relationship or it's not quite worked out, I think the fundamental thing they've all realised is they are deserving. And that's a massive thing. And even if it doesn't work here, they will go out from this process and realise, actually, I am deserving. I do have something to offer. And you know, my kids want this, so I can actually move forward now. So I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned, and it is so fast-tracked in 2 weeks to achieve that. So I think everybody will leave that process taking a certain amount of something from it and learning to respect themselves and realizing that the past is the past. It's not the here and now, and we can move forward and we can find somebody, providing we have an open mind and an open heart.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the word deserving that you said is very, very important. In all stages of life, we struggle with different things. You know, when we're adolescents, often we don't feel good enough. 20s, 30s, 40s, often so busy with so many different things. 50s, often people start to think, okay, who am I? You know, there's a moment to pause and look around and try to remember who you were right at the beginning of your adult journey, and you know, try to remember that you are deserving of all the good things. And these people have got a little bit more time to think about that. So yeah, I'm really hoping that this becomes a kind of a continuous series, and it just develops more and more as we go.
I think it will. I think it will grow, and it will grow because it has had so much interest. And as I say, the concept's great. But I think fundamentally what it shows us is it doesn't matter whatever age you are, you know, vulnerability, being scared. And throughout life, as you just said, you reflect at different stages in your life. But I don't think we ever become the finished article. We're always growing. We're always developing.
You think you are, and then something happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, something happens, and
off you go again. Start all over. Yeah.
And relationships are something to navigate, not the not instantaneously. Sorry, there's different bits that we need to sort of work on throughout that, and sort of understanding each other's needs and wants and respecting those. Doesn't mean we've got to do everything the same. Is so important. Just a mutual respect, and that leads to caring for somebody, and then eventually love. So yeah, I do love the concept of that, I have to say.
So we'll be back next week to talk about well, a little bit more about these shows and anything else that may have happened that sparks our interest related to relationships or reality.
Yes, we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
All right, so can't wait to see you next week. Have a great time in between.